When we think about global crises, we usually look for the epicenter.
Right.
Like we picture an earthquake where the ground shakes violently right where the fault line breaks. And you naturally assume that the further away you get from that specific point on the map, well, the safer you are.
Yeah, it's a very human way to look at the world. I mean, we like to compartmentalize risk. We sort of draw a circle around a problem and say, well, that's happening over there, so it doesn't really affect me over here.
Totally. But today we're taking the May 3rd, 2026 morning briefing and solving a very specific kind of unbelievable mystery for you.
Yes, we are.
Welcome to this custom deep dive. Today's mission is to answer one really vital question. How does a stalled peace treaty in the Middle East end up paralyzing the grading software at your local elementary school?
It's just a perfect study in interconnectedness, because what we're really examining today is how physical realities, war, geography, fuel logistics, how they dictate our digital realities.
Right.
These aren't isolated news stories. They are basically dominoes in a single, highly complex global system.
Yeah, so let's start by looking at that first domino. We are currently on day 65 of the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, and the diplomatic situation is just incredibly tense.
It's extremely fragile right now.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the briefing, and it highlights this new 14-point peace proposal from Iran. What are the actual mechanics of this proposal? Like, what are they asking for?
Well, Tehran has laid out a very strict set of demands, and they've actually attached a 30-day window to them.
A 30-day ticking clock.
Exactly. And the core of that 14-point plan requires guarantees of non-aggression plus sweeping sanctions relief. But notably, a complete end to the U.S. naval blockade of Iranian ports.
Okay.
And also a comprehensive resolution of hostilities across all fronts, which, importantly, they insist includes Lebanon.
Right. And Washington is reviewing this, obviously, but President Trump has publicly expressed some very serious doubts about whether these terms are acceptable.
Yes.
He's actually warning that military strikes could easily resume. And if you look at how this is landing across the political spectrum, the phrase bad deal is currently trending heavily.
Oh, massively.
Yeah. And just to be impartial here, it's actually trending in both pro-negotiation and anti-negotiation circles. Just, for entirely different reasons, depending on which side of the aisle you look at. Both sides just hate the deal.
Which highlights the diplomatic gridlock perfectly, right?
Yeah.
And while Washington deliberates, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, the IRGC, they have essentially drawn a line in the sand.
What's their stance?
Well, they've set their own deadline for the U.S. to lift the naval blockade. They're openly stating that a return to full-scale conflict is highly likely, basically calling the U.S.'s current options either an impossible military operation or a bad deal.
Wow. And I want to make sure we ground this in the human reality because the scale of this conflict is massive. Like, what does the fallout look like on the ground right now?
The preliminary numbers are just devastating. We are looking at a death toll of 3,375 in Iran and 2,509 in Lebanon. And beyond those immediate casualties, the economic collapse in Gaza is deepening every single day. It's creating a humanitarian crisis that aid organizations are warning will take years, if not decades, to resolve.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand how a conflict of this absolute magnitude ultimately reaches your daily life as a listener, we have to look at the water.
Right, the shipping lanes.
Exactly. The U.S. blockade of Iranian ports is focused really heavily around the Strait of Hormuz. And instead of looking at the strait as just a waterway, think of it as, like, the jugular vein.
Yeah.
It's a single toll booth on the only highway connecting global energy to tech infrastructure.
Because roughly 20% of the entire world's oil flows through that tiny choke point.
Right. So how does a naval blockade of oil in the Middle East practically impact a data center or a microchip fab plant thousands of miles away?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it all comes down to the physical cost of keeping the digital world turned on. I mean, chip fabrication plants and massive data centers, they do not run on thin air.
They need juice.
So much juice. They require massive, continuous amounts of electricity, and not just to power the servers, but to run the huge cooling systems so those servers don't literally melt down.
Right.
And the logistics networks that mine the raw materials for those chips and then, transport them globally, those are also entirely dependent on fuel. So when you choke off 20% of the world's oil supply, energy costs just spike globally.
So, like, a server farm in Virginia suddenly costs significantly more to operate just because oil tankers can't get through the Strait of Hormuz.
Precisely. The tech sector is incredibly energy intensive. Prolonged closure of that waterway means the hardware you buy and the cloud infrastructure you rely on suddenly becomes much more expensive to run.
Right.
And this is exactly why the U.S. is aggressively trying to recruit an international naval coalition right now, which they are officially calling the Maritime Freedom Construct, to try and secure those shipping lanes.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The physical blockade is driving up the cost of the cloud, sure. But reading through the briefing, it seems like the diplomatic fallout is actually doing something even more permanent.
Oh, absolutely.
It's literally redrawing the internet's borders. We are seeing the U.S. announce the withdrawal of roughly 5,000 troops from Germany.
A huge move.
Yeah, and this is being framed as a direct consequence of Germany being one of the most vocal critics of Washington's strategy regarding this Iran war.
Yeah, the transatlantic relationship is under visible historic strain right now. And that military and political fracture is really accelerating a movement in Europe known as digital sovereignty.
Right, I've seen that term thrown around a lot lately, but what does digital sovereignty actually look like in practice? Like on the ground?
Well, it's the idea that a nation's digital data and the physical infrastructure it runs on should be subject to the laws of the country where it is located and protected from foreign interference. Historically, the internet has been borderless, but now data borders are beginning to strictly map to physical political borders.
Wow.
Europe is looking at the 5,000 troops leaving Germany and the stark disagreement over the Middle East, and they're basically concluding that relying on American tech infrastructure is a glaring national security vulnerability.
And the briefing actually provides a massive example of this happening in real time. The French government just announced that its health data hub is migrating completely away from Microsoft Azure.
Yep.
They're moving to a French cloud provider called Scaleway. And I have to imagine migrating an entire country's health data is not just, dragging and dropping a folder on a desktop.
Oh, no, it is a monumental undertaking. You have to rewrite compliance structures, security protocols, countless API connections.
It's a nightmare.
A total operational nightmare. But France is willing to take that on, and Scaleway is actually scaling up to meet this demand. They just won a 180 million euro sovereign cloud tender from the European Commission just to build out this localized infrastructure.
And it isn't just France or just cloud storage, right? No. Like France, Austria, Denmark, Italy, and Germany are all actively pushing to replace Microsoft Windows with the open source Linux operating system across their government institutions.
Right.
Which is crazy because we usually assume a government chooses software based on price or like user features.
Yeah.
But here they are ripping out the foundational plumbing of their IT networks for pure geopolitical self-preservation.
Exactly. Which means we are essentially witnessing the balkanization of the internet. I mean, if your physical servers are owned by a U.S. company, they are ultimately subject to U.S. jurisdiction and foreign policy pressure.
Of course.
By building their own digital walls, Europe is trying to ensure that a diplomatic dispute in Washington doesn't result in their national health systems or government networks suddenly going dark.
Okay, so Europe walls itself off to play defense. Meanwhile, U.S. big tech is essentially sprinting in the opposite direction.
They're playing offense.
Massive offense. I am looking at the infrastructure spending numbers in the briefing, and I am struggling to wrap my head around the scale here. What is driving this sudden, huge spike in data center construction?
The capital expenditure numbers are truly historic. Google, Amazon, Meta, and Microsoft are on track to spend a combined $650 billion on data centers this year alone.
$650 billion, that's insane.
It is. That's a 60% jump over last year. And they are doing this because they are racing to build the physical infrastructure required for the next massive leap in artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and the briefing notes that Apple is feeling immense pressure here too. They're teasing major AI advancements for their upcoming WWDC conference, June 8th through 12th. They're really feeling the heat to deliver on-device AI experiences that actually differentiate them.
Definitely.
But let's pause and look at what all this computing power is actually being built for. The industry is just shifting toward agentic AI. How is an AI agent fundamentally different from the language models we've been using for the last few years?
Right. So a traditional large language model is essentially a very smart encyclopedia. You ask it a question, and it gives you text back.
Right, like ChatGPT.
Exactly. But agentic AI moves beyond conversation into autonomous action. An agent can be given a high-level goal, and it will independently break that goal down into steps, interact with other software, and execute the task on your behalf without you holding its hand.
And the briefing highlights some major moves happening in this space to normalize that tech. Anthropic just donated something called the Model Context Protocol, or MCP, to the Linux Foundation. How does MCP fit into this shift toward agents?
Think of MCP like a universal translator for AI. Right now, an AI model is mostly lock in a box. It can generate text, but it can't easily interact with your local computer.
Oh, okay.
MCP gives the AI the hands to reach out and safely interact with your actual computer files, your external databases, or your business software.
Wow.
So by donating it to the Linux Foundation, Anthropic is trying to make it an open source standard so every AI agent can seamlessly talk to every other system.
And that standard is being adopted incredibly fast. NVIDIA just secured 17 major enterprise adopters for its own agent toolkit, including massive companies like Adobe and Salesforce.
Yes.
Even Roblox, the platform used by literally millions of kids, they just launched Planning Mode, which is an agentic assistant that analyzes game code and executes action plans for young developers.
Which just shows how quickly this is moving from experimental tech to foundational infrastructure. We are putting autonomous agents in charge of enterprise software and giving them to children to help build games.
So what does this all mean? I mean, if these agents are getting hands and being integrated into everything, the security of the underlying code seems like it would be paramount.
Oh, absolutely.
But the briefing also flags some terrifying cyber vulnerabilities. We have a China-linked group called Shadow Earth 053 conducting an espionage campaign against government and defense sectors across Asia.
Yeah.
And they're also targeting Poland, which is notably the only NATO European member on their victim list. And they're doing this by exploiting vulnerabilities in Microsoft Exchange servers.
Right. And Exchange servers handle email and calendaring for massive organizations. So by compromising those, Shadow Earth 053 is gaining access to the internal communications of foreign governments. It's a classic espionage tactic.
But the attack that really stands out to me is this supply chain attack on PyTorch Lightning. The report says attackers hid an obfuscated JavaScript payload in versions 2.6.2 and 2.6.3 of the package.
Right.
Can you break down what that actually means for a developer?
This raises an important question about how we build software right now. PyTorch Lightning is an incredibly popular open-source Python package. Developers use it all the time to build machine learning and AI models.
Okay.
An obfuscated payload just means the hackers scrambled their malicious code to look like gibberish so automated security scanners wouldn't notice it.
Ooh, sneaky.
Very. It's like writing a bomb threat in an invisible, complex cipher and slipping it directly into the blueprints of a building.
And what does that hidden code actually do once it's inside the building?
It is specifically designed to harvest the credentials of the developers using it. So if a developer downloads that compromised version of PyTorch Lightning, version 2.6.2 or 2.6.3, to build an AI model, the payload steals their login information.
Oh, yikes.
And the attacker doesn't just compromise that one developer. They potentially gain the keys to the massive corporate networks, cloud environments, and data centers that the developer is connected to.
So if a hacker compromises one popular AI package today, they aren't just hacking a laptop. They are essentially embedding a backdoor into the automated systems of tomorrow. That's a massive structural flaw.
It's a perfect illustration of the double-edged sword of our current tech era. Because open source standards, like the ones Anthropic is pushing with MCP, they are essential for rapid innovation.
Right.
But open source supply chains are uniquely vulnerable. It is like pouring concrete for a skyscraper, but someone has secretly mixed a corrosive chemical into the cement at the factory.
Wow.
By the time you notice the weakness, the building is already 50 stories high.
At this point, as a listener, you might be thinking, okay, transatlantic server disputes, Iranian naval blockades, and malicious code in AI libraries, these are massive problems. But how does this actually affect my Tuesday morning?
Exactly.
Well, the answer to our original mystery lies in your local school district.
The trickle-down effect to local institutions, particularly education, is just severe. They are the endpoints where all of these global pressures collide.
Yeah, the briefing details a major cybersecurity incident at Instructure, which is the company that runs the Canvas learning management system.
Right.
Millions of students use Canvas every single day to turn in homework, check grades, communicate with teachers.
Oh.
But since May 1st, a criminal threat actor has caused major API disruptions on the platform. And this follows a previous breach by the Shiny Hunters group back in September 2025.
That's right.
What does an API disruption actually mean for, like, a 7th grade classroom trying to function?
Well, APIs are essentially the digital hallways that allow different software programs to communicate with each other. A school doesn't just use Canvas. They use specialized grading software, attendance trackers, plagiarism checkers.
Right, a whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And all of those tools need to talk to Canvas through an API. So when a threat actor disrupts those APIs, the digital hallways are locked.
Wow.
The teacher can't sync grades, the student can't access their assignments, and the digital classroom is basically completely paralyzed.
So schools are dealing with these massive cyber threats and API lockouts, which require expensive IT solutions and upgraded security. But right when they need that cyber funding the most, the federal government is debating pulling the financial rug out from under them.
Yeah, the federal education budget is currently a major battleground.
Right. The Trump administration has proposed new K-12 budget cuts.
Yeah.
And looking at the specifics impartially, the proposal includes eliminating an $890 million fund for English language acquisition services and $70 million for teacher quality partnership grants.
Significant numbers.
Very. And Congress has pushed back on similar cuts in the past, but the debate right now is fierce. Senator Elizabeth Warren actually gave a floor speech pushing back against these new cuts that ended up trending nationally.
I saw that.
Yeah, and her remarks drew strong praise from her supporters, while critics actively questioned her framing of the issue. But regardless of the politics, the reality is that schools are facing unprecedented technological challenges while fighting for basic operational funding.
What's fascinating here is that the local school has become the ultimate pressure test for every single global trend we have discussed today.
Yeah.
They are trying to secure their networks against international cybercrime syndicates using limited federal budgets, all while trying to navigate the absolute whiplash of the AI revolution.
And that whiplash is creating a massive media literacy crisis. A new survey in the briefing shows that 61% of elementary school educators say their students struggle heavily to distinguish AI-generated content from human-created content.
That 61% figure, that represents a fundamental structural gap in our educational foundation. We are asking teachers to instruct students on identifying synthetic media categories that literally didn't even exist 3 years ago.
All right.
The curriculum frameworks just haven't caught up to the technology.
But the response to this crisis is actually pretty fascinating, because the top-down adult policies are lagging so far behind, the students are the ones stepping up.
Yeah, this is great.
Dozens of superintendents and students are gathering in Boston this July in an initiative hosted by ASA, Day of AI, and MIT Raise. And the students themselves are going to take the lead in drafting a model AI use policy for school districts nationwide.
It's a brilliant, necessary approach. As we saw with the young developers using Agentic AI on Roblox, these students are the ones treating AI as a native tool.
They grew up with it.
Exactly. They understand its practical applications and its practical risks in ways that traditional top-down adult policymakers often miss entirely.
It's a massive irony, though. You have elementary students who are highly vulnerable to fake synthetic media, but it is the slightly older students who are having to step in and write the actual rule book for the adults.
Yep.
The system is just moving way too fast for the bureaucracy to regulate it.
It really speaks to the inherent fragility of human-designed systems. When the pace of technological change outstrips our bureaucratic ability to adapt, the systems break down.
Right.
We see it in the supply chain bottlenecks in the Middle East, we see it in transatlantic cloud alliances fracturing, and we see it in school district IT policies.
Yeah, we have spent a lot of time today exploring how human systems are breaking down under pressure, and it really can feel like an overwhelming cascade of bad news.
It can.
But before we wrap up, we promised a palate cleanser. Because while human infrastructure is incredibly fragile, we actually have a masterclass in resilience happening right now in nature.
We do.
The briefing includes a report from scientists in Hawaii who have just documented for the very first time Hawaiian green sea turtles actively grazing on invasive red algae.
This is such a remarkable biological response, because the red algae has been spreading rapidly, threatening to completely suffocate the coral reefs in the Pacific.
Right.
It's an invasive threat that the ecosystem was absolutely not prepared for.
And the turtles are just showing up and going to work. They're dramatically reducing the algae coverage and literally saving the reef ecosystem.
Yeah.
And what is so profound about this is that the Hawaiian green sea turtle is a protected species.
Yes.
They spent decades recovering from severe population decline. And now, this species that we had to protect is turning around and protecting one of the world's most threatened ecosystems.
It is a perfect closed-loop system of natural resilience. The ecosystem identified a threat and organically deployed a solution.
I think it's exactly what you, the listener, need to hear today. When you look at the news, it really can feel like everything is fracturing, from international peace talks in Washington to open source code libraries used by developers.
Yeah.
But nature proves that when a system is given the space and time to recover, it has an incredible capacity to heal itself. It finds a new balance.
It really does. And if we look at that through the lens of everything we unpacked today, it leaves us with a fascinating parallel to consider.
Okay, what's that?
Well, nature was able to naturally deploy its own autonomous agent, the sea turtle, to independently identify an invasive threat, clean it up, and restore balance to the entire reef network.
Right.
So when you look at our fractured digital networks, the supply chain hacks, and the hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into autonomous AI, you have to wonder, how long will it take before our own digital ecosystems develop that exact same kind of self-healing, autonomous resilience? Can we build an internet that fixes itself when the ground starts to shake?